Welcome to Showing Up Solo, your go-to source for solopreneur success in the digital world. You're not just running a business, you're wearing all the hats, from CEO to content creator. What if I told you there's a way to master online marketing without sacrificing all your time? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Showing Up Solo. I'm being pretty cheeky right now because I have invited the amazing trauma educator and coach, Lea Morrison, on the show, who did an amazing talk at the Chic Summit that I attended in February, and I was not able to attend that talk because I was presenting at the same time. So this is my sneaky way of getting that talk anyway and benefiting you in the process. So Lea, thank you so much for joining. Would you like to let the audience know a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm so glad that you're getting the talk. This is exciting. So yeah, you know what? I consider myself more of a metaphorical bridge between regular standard coaches and counselors. So I'm not a trained therapist or certified therapist by any means. But that bridge of understanding trauma, complex trauma, and how it affects our body and our emotions, and really shifts our perspective and how we relate to one another and our own self-trust, but also fusing that with the solution-focused forward thinking that you can get when working with a coach. So counselors usually focus on past experiences and how that made you feel. I do that too. Mm-hmm. And then coaches are like, okay, how are we going to move you forward and what are the goals and steps? And so when we can merge those together, that's kind of what I present with the education and with the client work.
I love that. I love that. It's interesting that you, the way that you qualify a coach, because I was very reluctant to use the term coach at first as well, because I like to think of myself as like a hands-on, we'll do it with you, not just like a stepping back and giving you goals kind of approach. So it's interesting because I think the word coach has had a bad rap in past years. And so we always like to say, well, this is the kind of coach that I am.
I think every industry has its definite bad apples. And which is where that trauma-informed piece comes in and why it's so important to me, because if you are working with somebody's life, you're working with their mental health. And when we can take that seriously and really recognize that we have a significant influence and a voice of authority, but to defer to the client in their authority and their autonomy, we can truly help somebody move forward. But knowing your limitations is equally, if not the most important.
I love that perspective. I think it's really important perspective. And actually, I've got kind of two angles. I know that the talk that you did at Chic was about trauma-informed sales. So that was about taking into account your potential client's trauma during the sales process. But then there's also the way that our own trauma influences how we sell ourselves. And I've seen that countless times with my clients, helping them get to a point where they can say nice things about themselves, and it's a bit of a balancing act. So I'd love to let's start with trauma-informed sales. What is that? What does that mean?
Well, it's recognizing the impact that somebody's life as well as yours has on the sales process. And I'm not a business coach whatsoever. And I too have struggled with sales. And this is where this type of course, the reason half the time when I write something and create a workshop, it's because I'm researching it for a different client or for myself. And when we look at the trauma-informed principles, that's essentially what we want to bring into every aspect of our business and sales. So the 5 principles that have to do with trauma-informed are, first, safety, which these sound like, of course, that's of course what they would be. But when you really dive into it, it's a little bit more nuanced and intricate, right? So we have safety, we have choice and collaboration, which are 2 of the same things, choice and consent, sorry. Then we have collaboration, empowerment, and trustworthiness. And really, when we look at those 5 principles, those are the tenets in how I live my life. And so if we take those 5 principles into how we run our business, how we approach sales, how we interact with our parents, how we communicate with our neighbor, how we raise our children, and how we manage conflict with our partners. Do you know what I mean? When we take those 5 tenets, we can truly not only shift how we see ourselves and present ourselves, but the impact in which we are communicating with other people. It can be a game changer. And when you look at the unethical aspects of sales, which I have had quite a few business coaches throughout the years. I've been in business for 8 years now, and we always look to another voice of authority to guide us and lead us the way.
Yeah. I've had a number of coaches in my career, and I know I'm interrupting here, but
That's okay. Please do.
I have had a lot of sales and marketing focused coaches. And there's a lot of effective copywriting and sales taps into an emotional connection. We know that it's effective, but I can see like it's a
There's
delicate
it's very
dance
blurry.
there. Yeah.
Well, let's look at what the way that I like to think of it is, who is your ideal client? Well, ideal is very rare. So who's your client? Well, first of all, who am I? What story am I coming to the table with when I'm trying to sell, but also when somebody's selling to me? What do I automatically go away from? And what is the story behind it? So when we look at my life, I started the talk at Chic Retreat. And I was like, okay, so when we look at my life, raised in poverty, out on my own at 18, there was a lot of sexual abuse and rape. There was, a divorce. Both my children almost died their first year of life. There's multiple head injuries. Like, I have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But if you met me on the street, you would have no idea.
No.
Right? So, but I am actually a majority.
Yeah.
So who you're selling to is the people that are hiding the wounds very, very deeply. Right?
Yeah.
So when we take that into account, when we're about to sell, does what we're presenting represent the 5 tenets of trauma-informed care? Am I providing safety? Am I providing choice and consent? Am I collaborating with this person? Do I feel that collaboration in return? Is there trust in what I'm saying? And does it lead to personal power?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we think about trauma, the way that I see it, I heard this phrase, this concept from Maston Kipp, who's like a world-renowned trauma coach, who's worked with all of the professionals. And he said, when you go through trauma, you find yourself on Trauma Island. You're flying along in a plane, you're dropped out of the belly of the plane, you're on a deserted island completely by yourself. And you're here on an island, isolated, feeling like nobody can see you, hear you, understand you. And over on the continent is everybody having a party and a good time and loving one another and feeling completely included. And when you are going through recovery, what you're essentially doing is building that bridge of empowerment from Trauma Island over into this continent of connection. But empowerment, your personal power, is stolen from you when trauma happens. And that could be a big one-time event or multiple layered small emotional injuries that shift the way that you see the world, where you just isolate. And so when you look at the definition of empowerment, it is quite literally to give power to an external source. That is the definition of empowerment. So through recovery, we want to build that bridge going from Trauma Island onto this continent of connection. So by doing that is to embody these 5 principles in every aspect, including the sales, which leads me into like unethical sales and how you strip that power from people, which doesn't necessarily constitute trauma. But when you're dealing and navigating, collaborating with people who have a history, you have no idea. What is it? Brene Brown said, every person you meet has a story that would drop you to your knees.
Yeah. Wow.
When we think about that in regards to sales and how we present ourselves, how much of that are we really, truly taking into account?
Mm-hmm.
And when you incorporate trauma-informed sales, you're actually building a long-term reputation. You're not focused on the quick fix right now. You're not focused on the quick sale. You're focused on their mental health and their emotional capacity, and sustainably building a reputation, the word of mouth, right? Yeah. This person made me feel seen and heard and validated. And this is why I'm going to continue to buy from them or work with them. Do you know what I mean?
It's so interesting. I've had a client recently who, it's happened a couple times where she's ended up crying during our sessions with gratitude, which you think in a marketing coaching session it would be pretty rare. But she's neurodivergent. She has ADHD. And I recognized immediately when we first talked, I said like, oh, I can see that you've got ADHD. I've got ADHD. And so I already have I have a different approach that I take with my clients who I know have ADHD, because I know that they need things a little differently.
Mm.
Small things like when I sell a power hour, letting them have an hour and a half instead of just an hour, because I know that they need extra time to just get through the conversation, because there's a lot of rabbit holes and going off in different directions and that 1 hour container can be very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Just even like saying, okay, I can see where you're coming from. Let's just try to, focus it in. And like this particular client, they've said like, no one's ever seen me this way. I've never felt listened to and heard. And it's interesting because my own personal neurodivergent trauma, which I wasn't even aware of until I had to start selling myself, that has been influencing me, has been influencing how I interact with my clients and even how I sell myself to my clients without me even kind of registering it. Mm-hmm. Which I think is just, and just what you were telling me about that just kind of, it brought that instance to mind where, like this person's going to come to me mm-hmm. for like anytime they have a problem, because they feel like they can have that trust, because I can have that room for some space created for their unique needs and their associated trauma with it.
Well, that empathy speaks volumes, right? And empathy is derived from experience. So the fact that you can relate to people who are very similar to you in nature, it allows them space to actually feel like they can expand, because trauma contracts us. Mm-hmm. And then we start to, when we find somebody who actually sees us, we expand a little bit and then we'll contract. And then somebody sees us again, or we continue working with them, well, we're going to expand a little bit more and then we'll contract. But we start to do this. And that relationship of expansion and contraction is ultimately what we want to create within our business and sales. We want to be able to hold space for the contractions so our client can expand. And that reputation is going to lead to long-term success and sustainability for you, because you are embodying what trust actually means for them.
So what would you say would be if I want to be conscious of being trauma informed in my selling process, in my marketing, what would be some red flags that would be like, oh, you are not doing that right now?
Well, we could take this into the comparison. Okay. So we have safety. Mm-hmm. The opposite of safety would be the exploitation of vulnerable clients. So exploiting a senior's inability to really foresee where you're coming from and taking advantage of their kindness or vulnerability, or selling to somebody's like their pain points. Well, we're now stretching into manipulation, right? Mm-hmm. So taking advantage of somebody's vulnerability to sell them something is a red flag. So if you feel like somebody's like, well, if you don't do this, you're never going to get better. Like when we go into, say, choice and consent, we can look at misleading or false advertising. Mm-hmm. Right? When we look at collaboration, we look at the bait and switch. Like there's so many things that we do. So what is bait and switch? It's like, let's say you booked an appointment for a massage and you got it on Groupon or something like that, right? And you go in there and you think you're getting a 1-hour massage. Oh no, sorry. You got this on discounts. You're actually going to get 40 minutes. If you want the 1 hour, you can pay XYZ. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to try and upsell you even more. That's a bait and switch. That's not what you thought you were coming in for, right? Okay. Something like that.
Like there's also for thinking you're coming in for like a free coaching call that's actually just like a sales call.
Exactly.
I had a situation like this where I have a pick my brain profile, and you can book me for a meet and greet, and someone booked a meet and greet, and the unspoken contract is that it's just a getting to know networking call. And then this person spent the entire time trying to find an angle to sell to me, and were basically pitching me, and they had booked my time to pitch to me, and that felt disgusting. Didn't work, but that's what you would say, like a bait and switch, right? Like saying,
exactly.
I'm coming to you with one thing, but I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah. What are your intentions? Am I tricking you with my intention? That's a bait and switch, right? And that goes against, one of the tenets of collaboration. It's you and me collaborating to move together, but it's actually me going to trick you so I can pull you in over here.
Yeah, it's the difference.
And it's
Like we're going
unethical.
to use more honest conversation. Like let's have a clarity call or a discovery call so we can figure out if we're a good fit to work together. So you're
Exactly.
coming into it from the perspective that yes, we're talking about something that you're selling. You're a service provider. And that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
Versus say have a free coaching session that says I'm going to be offering support and I'm not necessarily selling to you. Are you ready to transform your website from wanting to wonderful? Watch the free 90-minute workshop, Anatomy of a Homepage. Your homepage is more than just a web page. It's your virtual front door to the world of business, and it's where first impressions are made and conversions begin. In this pre-recorded webinar, I break down the key components that make up a powerful, conversion-focused homepage. Imagine the impact this could have on your online presence. The best part? You don't need to be a web design guru. Don't miss this opportunity to revolutionize your online presence. Dive into the Anatomy of a Homepage webinar and take the first step towards a website that truly captivates. Head over to showingupsolo.com/free for access.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes into like hidden fees and charges, which counters trustworthiness. Right? So we look at hidden fees. This is probably, it's not one of, there's many irks that I have within our health and wellness industry, but you go in and you want to know about a program or pricing of a program, but nobody shares their prices on their website. There's no transparency, right? And so they just want to get you onto the sales call and then convince you. But if there is transparency and trust, you're going to lay everything out on the open. This is how much I charge, and this is what you're going to get out of it. Instead of a very, very general, description, and you have to book a discovery call or a free call, and then it ends up being I just need to know the price.
I'm so glad you said this, because this is the advice I always give to people, is to put your prices out there right away, because I had a very bad experience where I got on it was a coach I'd worked with before. And so I had a price point in mind in terms of what I'd worked with them previously. We got on a call and we had this amazing call and I felt really seen and really wonderful. And then she told me the price and I was just like, I can't afford this. And then I felt really bad because I'd spent this hour with her and I really wanted it. And then it wasn't just financially viable for me. I would never have booked the call if I had known what the price was, because I knew I wouldn't be able to make it happen. Not that it wasn't worth the price. It just wasn't financially accessible to me at the time. And
we have to look at that financial feasibility for people. And that's where that misleading and false advertising, like all of these lead into it. Like if you're going to exploit a vulnerable client, you're going to try to convince them, well, you spend this much on your coffee every day. We don't realize that guilting somebody into buying your service is also a red flag. Like that is not trauma. And if you have to guilt somebody into working with you by manipulating how much XYZ costs for this, then we really should look at how we are valuing our own time. Am I literally comparing myself to a coffee a day?
Yeah. And
where is that value in
really
me?
Horrible too. I've had that happen with someone wanting money for charity and they were like, oh, it's the cost of a blizzard a day, because they happened to catch me eating a mini Dairy Queen blizzard and I was like, I don't get one of these every day. This was a special treat. And now I feel bad about my special treat.
So that in itself would be like a bit of a trigger for somebody who, like you're shaming me because you're seeing me and you're trying to take advantage of what you're seeing. You're trying to speak to me, but it's also exploitation and manipulation. And it's, when I offer programs, I offer very, very low pricing and high pricing, right? There's certain variations, this is the good things that come out of my business coaches. They teach me how to scale properly. But one thing that I also do is that if you are doing a payment plan, I'm going to charge you a percentage higher because I have to process it through the credit card. But I'm going to tell you exactly what that percentage is, and I'm going to break it down, and you're going to know exactly how much the tax costs on everything. And this is your final price. Everything is broken down. There is no hidden fee or charge. You know exactly what you're getting. And that really speaks to the amount of trust that you have. Like I will be fully transparent with you with everything. And then you get to make a conscious choice
Yeah.
and have that autonomy to be like, yes, okay, I want to work with this person.
So a lot of the things that you're saying that are good for trauma informed sales are actually just good practices anyway if you're an honest person who's a good salesperson at the same time, because um I'm always preaching transparent in your prices because your ideal client should be able to happily afford what you have to offer. Like it shouldn't feel painful to part with their money because they're not going to get the full experience. That doesn't mean that you can't, but like if that's why you might have different priced offerings, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want someone to feel like they're like taking food out of their children's mouths to pay for something. If it, like you want it to feel like a good purchase.
Yes.
And in terms of like trustworthiness and stuff, like you need to believe in what you say. I mean, I always stay away from, I won't promise you X, Y, and Z revenue or that kind of like, I won't say you're going to double your income within 3 weeks. It's nothing like that because so much of what you do depends on the individual person. So
Yes.
instead, it's things like, this is what we're going to create together. And then the ball's in your court. And this is the kind of confidence I can help you gain. But again, it's very much, like you said, it's a collaborative process. It's just
Well,
like seeing all this working through.
exactly. And the measurement, like if you can actively measure where your clients will be if they do XYZ, that's a different form of guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
These are measurable results. We are going to keep coming back to where we started from so you can see the measurable. That's integrity, right?
Yes.
That's you promoting yourself. But then we look at when you remove empowerment from somebody, that's doing the high pressure sales, right? Like when you are pressuring somebody, like if you don't do this, you're going to be sick. Or if you don't do XYZ, that this is where your life's going to be like in 3 months, right? Or 6 months or whatever. Those high pressure sales, again, steal the personal power away from the person and from you because you are now promising the world, but you're also doing it in an unethical way. And I really want to be clear that people who practice these methods have been taught these methods by other people. And trauma-informed applications is relatively new, right? Like trauma-informed just was literally coined in the last 15 years. So the neuroscience and the research that's coming up on trauma reactivity and responses has just, hit mainstream, which is why it's becoming trending, right? But there is something to it. So if you find yourself, and I'm talking to your listeners, if you find yourself doing one of these practices, I don't want you to feel shame for it. There would be I'm going to be curious how I feel listening to this. And then how can I shift my sales process moving forward? How can I embody the 5 tenets of trauma-informed care more delicately in how I present myself and how I'm interacting with my clients? And I would challenge you to check in with yourself within 6 months to see how it's shifted your business, because the impact is unbelievable.
I love that. Okay, listeners, that's some homework.
But
No, it's true though. Like there's a lot of people out there preaching specific ways, and there are some tried and tested. When I used to work at the shoe store, everyone knows I used to work at a shoe store. We had a very formulaic way of how we were supposed to sell. You had to greet the person within 30 seconds. Then you had to start with an open-ended question. You had to bring them 3 shoes. And it can feel very formulaic, but it can also feel authentic if you're like, you need to, if you come from a place of genuinely trying to help someone, then that happens naturally, like asking open-ended questions. That's just curiosity,
Yeah.
It's, I think if you feel like you're being yourself while you're selling, then you're probably doing okay. Versus if you feel icky, if there's a difference between feeling icky and feeling like, imposter syndrome. But if you,
big difference.
Yeah. If you feel like this is not me, these are not my words coming out of my mouth, that's probably somewhere to explore, because your sales process, selling can feel completely natural just because you're talking about what you do and you're just so passionate about what you do and you love it so much and it's going to help people because you really believe in what you do. Then it doesn't even feel like you're selling. It feels like you're just sharing the news with people, letting them know and letting them take the action. And there's ways to channel that into your marketing. But if it feels forced or like you're using someone else's words too much, it shows, and it just, and in the people you attract too, those client relationships won't be the same.
They're
as
not
the
sustainable.
Exactly. You won't get the clients crying with gratitude.
Yeah. I had as a coach and somebody who puts out proposals and all that kind of stuff for talks and education and everything. I had another coach that I was working with saying, like, when you do a discovery call, you want to close that sale. Mm-hmm. And it never felt good to me. Never. And I had to sit with it for a while, and I tried. And then I felt like a failure when I didn't close a client from a 20-minute discovery call. Yeah. So what I started doing was this. I was like, okay, this doesn't feel right. I don't like this. And this was actually the start of this program. How do I incorporate that? Well, I started to be like, okay, we've had this chat. How are you feeling? And we end the conversation with, how are you feeling? Do you have any more questions? And if they said to me, you know what, I want to move forward. Perfect. I'll follow up with an email right away. I'll lay out everything that we just talked about, and we'll get started. But if they're like, I don't know, I need to think about it, which is, a lot of the time when for me, talking about trauma, no, but it's not fun. It's a hard sell. Okay. It's a hard sell. But what I'll do is I'll ask them permission. Can I follow up with you in a couple of days? And every single 100% of the time, they'll be like, absolutely. And I will follow up with notes of our conversation and a breakdown of everything that I spoke about, including prices and transparency, and encouraging them to, this is your choice and this is a big decision. You're about to spend a lot of money. This decision shouldn't be taken lightly. And I respect that. And if it doesn't work now, then with your permission, I'll follow up in another 6 months. So you're constantly giving them choice, and you're still keeping that collaboration open with them for future conversations. Right?
I love that approach too, because a lot of people do shy away from closing the sale at the end of the call because it can feel wrong.
Pressury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me, I don't usually have to close, because by the time people get on a sales call with me, they pretty much is really me interviewing them to see if they're a good fit versus closing it. And that's another thing you can do, is by being transparent, by having that information out there and available on your website, in your marketing. People can come to you from a place where they've already gathered the information, and you're just looking to see if it's the right fit.
Exactly.
But I love your approach too, for those who just really don't have that, just don't feel comfortable asking for a sale at the end of it.
So with my trauma, I know that if I make an impulse decision, it's not going to be a good decision. Mm-hmm. I know that about myself. I need about a day or two to think it through. Mm-hmm. And while other people, it has to be a gut reaction. They got to listen to their gut. If they take a couple of days, they're overthinking and they'll never follow through. So that's where we can take that trauma-informed approach with our sales, is really climbing into, how is this person responding to me? Am I providing all of these tenets that I need to provide? Am I following up in a really kind and compassionate way? And really recognizing that if people don't purchase from you, not because of you, but because of trauma. Right? Like, they have difficulty trusting themselves and difficulty trusting others, right? There's a lot of things that go into why people don't buy. And it's not because, if there's any form of financial trauma too, or they feel manipulated, or they have a history of spending too much money on impulse decisions, and then they're second guessing themselves, really hearing them, not taking advantage of that, but hearing them and giving them the space to really think that through, can actually result in more sales for you later on, because they feel like they can trust you.
Yeah. It's like some of the tactics are like, put on the pressure, fear of missing out, and, buy now, act now for this discount. And you're right. That's going to be really triggering for some people, and just turn them off immediately. So saying, like, this is like, if you need, one of the caveats that I've seen a lot of people put in lately is, let me know if this is not, if money is the only issue, and we'll talk about ways to make it more affordable, either by payment plans and stuff, and having that in there so there's less of that.
Yeah.
pressure and shame attached. Like if you don't act now, your life is
Oh,
gonna suck kind of vibe.
that high pressure sales is really, really, really unkind. Like it's unethical, yes, but it's unkind
Mm-hmm.
because it's putting, you don't know what that person's week was or year was, or how many times that they have been pressured into something that they didn't want to do in the first place. So you're already starting off on a foot where they don't feel like they have autonomy, or they don't have a voice to disagree with you, or, and this is not for everyone, but it is for those people that are really wanting to up level their business in a completely different way, which is incorporating those tenets to be able to maintain sovereignty for themselves and their
Yeah.
clients.
Well, my listeners are usually people who've been socialized as women, online service providers, and we tend to do what we do because we used to be our client. That's one of the, like, most of the time, the service that we're offering is the service we wish we had when we started out, or we wish we had had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of what you said could really be just a natural way to expand your ability to serve people in a way that feels really great to you, because I think a lot of us are helpers. Well, you don't become a service provider if you don't like helping people. I mean, if you do,
Well, yeah.
maybe rethink your career, because that's literally what the job is helping people.
Yeah,
So
being of service means that there is something that you are like that feels passionate to you, right? I got into the field of trauma by going through trauma, and now I'm of service in trauma,
exactly,
right?
I got into marketing because I had to. I needed to find clients fast so I could pay rent and buy food, and now I want to help. But then I also found empowerment, so I want to help other people find that.
Yeah.
And exactly. Um,
You're,
I do think this is the kind of topic we could talk about for hours, and I'll probably have to have you back for a follow up. Um, but just in the interest of respecting everybody's time, do you have any last minute thoughts or key insights that you'd like people to take away from this conversation?
well, just recognizing that when you're working with the public, you're working with their mental health. And the more responsibility and integrity we take with that act, we will shift the dynamic and the culture of the world. And we can just start with our own little community. And by being that person that other people are like, oh yeah, no, that's a trauma-informed marketer. That's a trauma-informed social media manager. Like that is a game changer for a lot of us who I will not work with people who are not trauma-informed, because I know my limitations and I also know what I need out of people. So recognizing that. And, if anybody's interested in this workbook, I actually have it. You can purchase it. I think it's like $20. It's super cheap on my website, mindyourheartacademy.com. It's a website that I just launched in the last month. So there's not very much on there yet,
That's
but
okay.
it's for trauma education and regulation. And there's some freebies in there, and safety and language, and how to incorporate that into your business. And so I'm trying to get as much free stuff up on there, or at least low cost, to just help people incorporate this education and knowledge into their business, because I truly think that if we begin to do this, we can change the world. That's an ambitious statement, but it's true.
I love that. I love that. And you preempted me, because I was about to say, where can people find you online?
Yeah.
How can they get in touch? So is there any other, we'll obviously leave any links that you'd like us to leave in the show notes. So everyone go to the show notes so you can find a link to Lea's website. Social media, where can we find you?
So my social media handle on Instagram is Lea Morrison with the number 1, because somebody is called Lea Morrison on Instagram, but they've been dormant for 15 some odd years and they won't give it up. So I'm Lea Morrison number 1 on Instagram, LinkedIn, Lea Morrison, Facebook, Lea Morrison Healing. If you're questioning, there's always a healing behind it for the most part, except for Instagram. And then the websites are leamorrison.com, which is my main website. And then the Academy, where you can find, it's linked in my main website as well, but the Academy, which I'm just starting to launch, or just launched last month for the first time. So that will be a building resource.
Getting a workbook. I think it's such a great resource to have. Well, thank you so much, Lea, for joining us today. And this has just been a super valuable conversation. I hope listeners are feeling empowered from the conversation and ready to explores further, I highly recommend looking up Lea and getting your hands on anything free she has to give, because she's obviously a font of knowledge.
Oh,
and until next episode, thank you everyone for tuning in.
thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Showing Up Solo. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review or sharing your thoughts in the comments. These simple gestures help us appease the algorithm gods and continue to bring you great, free education. Ready to navigate the world of marketing with confidence? Take the Marketing Compass quiz, available at showingupsolo.com, to discover the next phase of your journey. And don't forget to explore our range of courses and coaching programs while you're there. Let's transform your solo venture into a thriving success story together. Until the next episode, keep showing up and making your mark in the world of solopreneurship. See you soon.